Welcome to the Big Book Roundtable and the RICO 12 family of recovery resources targeted at people from all backgrounds, faiths, and places dealing with addictions of all varieties. RICO 12 is also a resource for the loved ones of addicts. I'm Justin B. I'm a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a multidisciplinary addict living in miraculous recovery, and am blessed to be the moderator of this roundtable. I'm joined today by David G. and Nikki M., and the three of us are striving to live in the miracle of recovery one day at a time. And we're super excited to work on this project. I'm getting a ton out of it, and I think we're all getting a ton out of this. This is good. I'll quickly further introduce myself and then get to the panelists. I'm the steward of the RICO 12 family of recovery resources, and what an amazing privilege that is. We have several podcasts. We've got our RICO 12 speaker meeting, RICO 12 shares. We've got this Big Book Roundtable and Noodle It Out with Nikki. And there's more stuff coming down the pipeline. So buckle up. This is an adventure, and we're happy to be here. David, would you mind just taking a second and introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Justin, for your service. My name is David G. I'm an alcoholic and an addict of many sorts from Oklahoma. Grateful to have a recovery date in Alcoholics Anonymous of August 8th, 1994, and a emotional recovery date in the SA rooms of October 1st, 2019. Really glad to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, David. We appreciate having you and your experience in here. Nikki, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody, and I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm Nikki M., and I'm a active member in many fellowships. I should say that. I have my paws in everywhere because I've got the disease of alcoholism, the family disease of alcoholism, and I'm just so grateful to be here with you guys. And I'm growing so much with this roundtable. I was really looking forward to sitting down tonight at this virtual roundtable. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you, Nikki. Man, we've got such an awesome team here that are working on this. And today we're going to jump right back into the doctor's opinion where we left off last week. We're going to start on page Roman numeral 28. That's xxviii, about halfway down the page in your fourth edition of the Big Book. And we'll be reading a handful of paragraphs here and then doing a quick roundtable on it, so a snorkel through them. And so get your Big Book out. Get your pen, pencil, highlighter out. Get ready to dive in because there's some good stuff that's going to be coming out of this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read, and then we'll get into it. If any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel, after many years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented, unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed and who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Man, there's so much in there, and it's so much at the core of what this whole program is about. I'm excited to dive into these paragraphs here. Let's start with Nikki. Nikki, would you mind just kind of sharing a few things that jumped out at you and talking about your experience, strength, and hope based on what we just read here?
Oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you. And just, listening to you read it over me, it hit me in a different way. I mean, I'm sure we've all gone through this a few times. And David, I know you sponsor a lot. And it just hit me different just now because as I introduced myself, I said the family disease of alcoholism. And I've had a resentment since COVID about the doctors, and I'm seeing, of course, it's sentimental. This is the doctors writing this. They're watching. They're saying, stand with us and see these tragedy, see these families, the disease of alcoholism. I put, see the tragedies. Number one, the despairing wives. Number two, the children. And it says this has to be a daily work, even in my sleeping moments. I mean, we don't get a break from this. This is really what they talk about it later, a working part of my mind. But as we're reading this part, I want to stay right here, which is daily work, even in my sleeping moments. Like I'm here in the rooms 11 years. When I read this at first, I just read it. I don't absorb it. Now I'm like, even just the way you read from the doctor's view, it's like, wow, Nikki, doctors do care. They're saying, stand with us. And it says, right, I love what it says here. It says, I put a thing like they're convicted. They've witnessed these miracles. The most cynical will not wonder. They'll accept and be encouraged by this movement. This is a movement. That's why I said, it's funny, as I introduce myself, I see right here why, because this is a movement. I'm in many different rooms because unfortunately, one room isn't accepted anymore. I understand primary purpose. I do understand that. But if I look in my book, it says our purpose is to serve God's people. That's really it. And of course, we cannot do that when we're blotting it out. And, they have many years of experiences. These are doctors, and they have found that nothing. And what's an altruistic movement? I mean, it's basically, I'm disinterested in self. I'm selfless. I have no interest in self. And this is in our workbook, Justin, because this is a really power hitter. Like I think, I go through my big book and I cross out drink and put think, because I like that effect produced. And everyone's like, as I always give the example of a fantasy addict, these thoughts are not, I'm on a yacht having a good time in the French Riviera. These are dark thoughts sometimes. And then I get more about it because I grew up in a household filled with alcoholism, fear, self-pity, morbid reflection. And I like that effect produced just by my thoughts. Those numb me out. And it says, I'm restless, irritable, and I love this line. I just use it with a sponsee. She called me. She goes, Nikki, I have to call you right now. And I said, yeah, because you can't differentiate the true from the false. I need to push my clear perception on you. She had something at work. And I said, let me repeat back. This program's made me a better listener. So let me repeat back what I heard, because you cannot differentiate the true from the false, even 13 years sober in program. You see a daily reprieve. And of course, I don't want to take up too much time. Psychic change. This is a mind and soul change I need to have, which it talks about on the next part. I have to have a mind and soul change and my line out. And I did not have this when I first read it. I didn't even have it 6 years ago. This is only recently it's hit me. Every day, I need to have a mind and soul change. Every day. It's like staying clean off yesterday's shower. And those who do not understand, who are those people who do not get what it's like to be in the grip of a progressive illness, that once they start, they can't stop? And here it is. The only effort necessary. Follow simple rules. And I know, David, you've been here a while. Justin, you also. There's not a lot of rules here. You'll hear people and sponsors suggest some really strange things. But if you go down to the book, I can think of one off the top of my head is the rule is we must always be hard on ourselves and considerate of others. I can't think of many more. There's a few, so our rule is there's not a lot. So I'm just so grateful because I'm having empathy here for doctors and realizing they're just like us. But what is this telling me? I'm beyond human aid. And I need a psychic change. And the only effort, there's not simple rules. This is a simple program. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. I really enjoyed how you dug into that. And I also, when I read that first paragraph that I read there, I felt the emotion, the pleading from the doctors. Look, this isn't a joke. And that's the first time I've read the words, but I hadn't felt that emotion until this time through. David, tell us a little bit about your insights into these paragraphs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Nikki, for your share. It's always inspiring and very uplifting. So thank you very much for your experience here. I love what you read, Justin. If any feel, key word right there, feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital, we appear, and don't mean we are, but we appear somewhat sentimental. Let them stand with us a while on the firing line, the tragedies, the despairing lives of little children. So if I'm feeling that, as we move through this book, we're going to look at feelings. We're going to look at perceptions. We're going to look at ideas. We're going to look at emotions. We're going to look at attitudes. We're going to look at all the things that make up the self. And so he begins to talk about this right here on this very first page. Now, I've seen this with people that I sponsor, tragedies, despairing wives, little children. I've been in meth houses in downtown Oklahoma City. It was absolutely awful. The stench, the little kids running around with diapers that have been on for days, and the wives that are there just, and it's terrible. I mean, the things that I've seen and witnessed over 29 years of being in this program is absolutely unbelievable. So I'm with him. If you think that if we appear somewhat sentimental, come hang out with us. Had a guy in the church during the COVID. You know, he would send out this stuff every day, and we got to be of help. We got to be of help. And I was like, come go to the crack house with me downtown Oklahoma City. We'll be of help. I promise you. And absolutely no response to that at all. So, you know, it takes a certain kind of person to be able to stand on the firing line like that. Let that become the solving of the problems. You know, that's what we do here. We are able to solve problems because of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and its content. See, the problem isn't drinking. It isn't meth. It isn't sex. It isn't codependency. It's not all that. It's self. It's the things that drive me to do all that. That's the problem. He says, let that become a part of your daily work. And then you won't wonder why we've accepted and encouraged. So we feel, there it is again, after many years of experience, nothing has contributed more to this than this altruistic movement. But for me, the bottom paragraph here really jumps because it says, we drank essentially because we liked the effect produced by alcohol. When I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I debated that with my sponsor. And I said, I don't believe that. You know, I believe that I drank because I like the taste. I like bourbon. I like vodka. I like anything to do with alcohol. Love it. He said, I noticed you're drinking coffee. I said, yeah. And he said, do you drink 48 cups of that every time you sit down? I said, no, of course not. And he said, why? Well, it doesn't do anything. He said, so in other words, it has no effect. And all of a sudden, this began to make sense. I don't drink because of the taste. I don't act out because of it. It's the effect that it produces. See, it's not the cause, but it is most definitely the effect. We haven't got to the cause yet. We're leading up to that. He says the sensation is so elusive, so that tells me that that's not, that's self. Anything that can deceive me into believing that it's real when it's not, then, now we've got to the root of the problem. If drinking is the problem, just don't drink, and you shouldn't have any more problem. If using is the problem, just don't use, shouldn't have any more problem. If thinking, codependent, any of that, eating, whatever it is, just don't do that anymore, right? But every time I quit doing that, I got something that shows up, and it's very upset, and it's very mad, and it's all kinds of ideas. So he's going to tell me that I cannot differentiate the true from the false. Now, for years when I read this, I thought he was talking about drinking and acting out and all this different stuff. But what he's talking about is I don't have the ability to differentiate the true from the false when it comes to my beliefs, my conceptions, my ideas, because they're based all on false because of what I've learned as a child growing up. So that takes on a whole new meaning for this. He says now this is what I need to watch for the rest of my life being sober. He's not talking about when I'm drinking, acting out, whatever I'm doing here. He's talking about when I am sober. Restless. For me, that's physical. Irritable. For me, that's mental. And disconnected, that's spiritual. So the rest of this book is going to lay out in that order. Body, mind, spirit, body, mind, spirit, body, mind, spirit. We're going to see it over and over and over. But look what he says. This is what's happened to me. And unless I can, again, experience the sense and ease of comfort that comes by taking a few drinks, whatever that drink may be, whatever it may be. Drinks I see others taking with impunity. I had an ex-wife that could drink 3 beers out of a 6-pack, and it may be 6 months before she ever drank again. I drank the same 3 beers out of a 6-pack, and it's 6 months before I quit. Why can she do that and me not? Well, he describes it in the next sentences. After we succumb to the desire again, after we go ahead and give in to whatever our addiction is, as so many do, see, that's when the phenomenon of craving develops, according to our book, not before. I sat around in AA for almost a year thinking I was craving alcohol. Nobody ever told me any different. You see, I'm not fighting the craving at this point when I'm sober. I'm fighting irritable restlessness, discontentment. I am fighting the obsession to the mind. I'm not fighting the craving. That does not produce, look what he says, until it goes into the body. So we pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerge and remorseful with a firm resolution to never do that again. I swear to God, stack of Bibles. Well, it's repeated over and over, and unless David can experience what today is known as a spiritual experience, those days it was an entire psychic change. There's be very little hope for his recovery. But the good news is, on the other hand, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once the spiritual experience has occurred, the very same person, David, who seemed doomed, see, he wasn't doomed, he just seemed that way. Self had convinced me that I was doomed. Who had so many problems that he despaired of ever solving, suddenly finds himself. Anytime I see that word in the big book, suddenly, that's an awakening. That's an awakening of spirit. Easily able to control his desire for alcohol. I spent all of my life trying to do that and could never do it. And all of a sudden, I'm easily able to do that. But there is a condition here. And he calls it an effort, being necessary to be required to follow a few simple rules. And that's the rest of the process of the big book as it's laid out. It's going to show me how to do that. That's the only effort necessary here, required. So good stuff. Grateful to be here and be able to share. And thank you both.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I got a couple of questions, a question for each of you, maybe 2 questions. We'll see how this goes. Nikki, and I've heard you talk a lot about this, not being able to differentiate the true from the false. Tell us a little bit about why that is such a hinge pin thing, is such an important thing for us in recovery to recognize and even embrace the fact that I can't differentiate the true from the false. Why is that so important to understand?
Well, I love it what it says here, Justin. It says, my addict life is my only normal one. See, I've been programmed. This is a program, everybody. I told someone today, I met someone today, a fellow in the States, said there's someone in Toronto, Nikki, and I met him. He's just brand new. And I said that. It's like, your addict life is your only normal one. And he's a computer programmer. And I said to him, your old program's not working. He's my age, 53. And I said, remember when, back then when they had these desktops and you'd go like that whole model, all of it, it doesn't work. We're going to have to sweep away your prejudice here. See, you've grown up with these, as David was just saying, these beliefs, these values, these morals, or how about lack of, is what David just said. I come from Orange County, and yeah, crystal meth was my DOC back then when, way back when. And long story short, it's so sad to see the lack of morals and values in these family systems. So I have to get rid of it. So I don't know how to because my addict life is the only normal one. It's normal to be chaotic. It's normal for me to be driven by self. It's normal for me to think that I'm being helpful, not realizing I want something in return. That's normal. Aren't you going to give me something? This is real radical. So I have to, it's important. I think your question was like, why is it important? Because I have to understand what's happening to me. For years, I did not understand. I heard someone say they had a resentment for 13 years because they sat in the rooms and they didn't understand what was going on. And this book says what's going on. My addict, my alcoholism, family life, my thinking, this morals and values and set of beliefs I have is the only normal thing I know. It's my programming. So I need to be reprogrammed. Remember, later they're going to say, we urge you to do our program. For nothing, no human aid will be so helpful, nothing, as the radically changed attitude that God's going to show you how to have. So I love that line too. It was normal. And I'm not going to get into tell you what I was doing that I thought was normal. We don't do fist steps over here.
Love it, Nikki. And my own experience with that is I seriously thought that because I thought this way or acted this way specifically, and I'll in sex addiction, that it's just because I'm a dude. Every dude is this way. Every dude is not this way, but that was my thought. If I'm this way, everybody else is. And it's the only normal thing that I thought that there was out there. And thank you for sharing that. David, my question for you is, you talked about obsession and craving. I've talked to many people who are just like out of their minds or jittery and just bouncing. I'm craving a drink. I'm craving a drug. I'm craving to act out, whatever it is. And they're saying that. But you say, hey, that's not correct. That's not the right usage. Tell us a little bit about the difference between crave and obsession and why it's important to understand that difference.
Absolutely, Justin. For one thing, I could never get sober until I absolutely did understand it. The craving is never going to develop within me as long as I don't put anything in my body to activate that. It's just not going to. I mean, we read it right here today. And in the next paragraphs, probably on the next podcast, we'll look at this even deeper. But he says, after we succumb to the desire again there, as so many do, after we go ahead and give in to that obsession of the mind, and then the phenomenon of craving develops. See, I mean, it's right here in black and white. I've taken every word of this book for truth for so many years because it's the truth. And so the reason that it's so important for that, and we'll read about a man named Roland Hazard who had a conversation with Dr. Jung, who took a voyage all the way across the ocean to Europe and spent a year with him there. And he was so convinced that he had acquired such a profound workings, the inner workings of his mind, that relapse was unthinkable. But the book says he was drunk in a short time. Why? Well, after a year, he left Europe and he was headed home. And he got to France. And his mind said, hey, one drink won't hurt us. I mean, we understand the problem now. We know what's going on. Everything is different. It's been a year now, yada, yada, the voices. And he bought into that lie and he took that drink. But what he didn't understand is once you put that inside of your body, it's going to trigger something beyond your mental control. And you're going to be absolutely unable to stop, whether that's alcohol, whether that's drug, whether it's food, no matter what your addiction may be. That's exactly what it is. Even with lust, people ask me all the time, David, how does this work with lust? Well, for me, I'm a lust addict. And so anytime that thought comes, and if I don't have the rest of this program, particularly in step 10, to catch that and turn that right away, and I take action based on that, the minute that I take action outside of that thought, clicking on the internet, sending a text, whatever that may be, I have now stepped in to more than just the obsession. Now I've begun to take physical action, and that's going to produce a craving for more of the same. Anybody that is a lust addict that has spent hours and hours and hours with pornography knows that once you start doing that, you absolutely cannot stop. And that is anything that demands me to do more of the same. That's the physical craving. So for me to understand that is vitally important. With all the people that I work with, we hammer this chapter out. It's like you have to understand that as long as you don't take action outside of that thought, you'll never trigger that allergic reaction when it comes to lust. But the minute you do, get ready, because you're getting ready to go on a spree, most likely, with most addicts I know. So it's very important. Your question was, why is it important that we know this? Because the mind will always trick me into believing that it's okay for me to do this. It's going to be all right. We're not going that far this time. And the minute I buy into that lie, I cannot differentiate the true from the false. My alcoholic life seems, keyword right there, to be the only normal one. It's not the normal one. It only seems to be. And I'll take action based on that. And I'm headed for a long relapse. And man, I spent years experimenting this. I know it's the truth. So I hope that answers your question, but that's my experience with it for sure.
Yeah, I think that, thank you, David. I think that gives us a really firm foundation to build on over the next, well, this whole time as we go through this, the craving, the obsession, what's the difference? Why is it important? How do we build on that? And I love and I totally identify with this, the lust thing. Lust is toxic to me, just like alcohol is toxic to somebody who suffers the disease of, well, who is an alcoholic, and I just I can't ingest it. I have to counteract it. I have to, walk away, just like what you said. And it's frustrating to me in my active addict self, to see that others can partake with impunity. Drinks, lust hits, whatever, which I see others taking with impunity, and I'm like, that's not fair. I want that, but it doesn't do me any good. All right, very good. Let's jump to some takeaways here, Nikki. So, based on what we've talked about here, what is a takeaway that you have from our discussion and from what we read?
Well, it's compassion. Just as I'm reading that, it's words matter, and it's just compassion. As we stand with us, even forget the doctors. How about stand with us sponsors? Stand with us fellows in the rooms. Stand with us members. Stand with the human race on the firing line. See the tragedies. See the tragedies. And a lot of these tragedies, as David said, a lot of it's sober. I see a lot of people, they're sober, but they're the dry trunks dying and not even aware of it, because this is, at least I'm sober. At least I'm sober. And so also, if you're in the room, stand with us and watch your fellows and make sure they're free, because the book doesn't talk about mediocre recovery. I say this a lot. It talks about miracles. So just join us on the firing lines and watch these tragedies, final thought, turn into, you guys know, miracles.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. Miracles. All right, David, what's a takeaway that you have from our conversation here so far today?
Good stuff today. My takeaway is better find a way to connect with power, spirit, source, God, psychic change, spiritual experience, whatever you want to call that. Because if you look at the very last sentence, on Roman numeral 29 in the first paragraph, so to speak, there. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, or whatever you want to call that today, there's going to be very little hope of your recovery. So that's a very important takeaway from me. Even being sober all these years, I better find a way to continue to give my life and will over to the care of this creator that I've come to know through this program, that I've found through this book and this work, because I've seen it too many times. You get comfortable here. You quit doing what we do. The payout's not very good. It's not very good at all. I've helped bury several. So, I'm going to continue doing what we do here. So that's my takeaway for today.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Nikki. My takeaway, I had a couple real quick ones. First is the word seemingly or seemed. That's a lie. Especially when it seems to me that this is the case. No, I don't know the truth from the lie. I can't differentiate that. And if I'm in a seemingly hopeless state of mind, it's just because that's what I'm seeming to be. And the other thing that I really got out of this, the restless, irritable, and discontented being physical, mental, and spiritual. I've never split that up like that. And I think that is something that, as I read that and I made that note, some things started falling into place in my own work and in working with others. So I'm thankful for those takeaways. Guys, this was really good. And I'm grateful for your participation, Nikki and David, in this. And we'll catch you next time around. Everybody out there, join us in the Fellowship of the Spirit. Come trudge this adventurous and amazing road of happy destiny with us. Work it. You are worth it.